How much consideration did you give to adding a veteran receiver during the offseason? What ultimately made you decide to stick with the young guys y'all have?
Yeah, I think obviously we're very excited about that group and how they're going to grow together with Jordan and the whole offense. But yeah, we look at all those things, and if it's and we'll continue to, and if the right player and the right price and all that kind of stuff comes around, we'll certainly contemplate it and see if that makes some sense. But the players we have right now in that group need to play. They need the reps, and so we're excited about that.
You know, at quarterback, they've changed the rules where you can have a third on up now. Like I realize you're not going to hand a crappy third guy, crappy quarterback a roster spot. I get that part of it, but does that change potentially your thinking going into this?
It could. You know, we've looked at it a little bit, and you know, as we've gone and the playoffs actually, I think when you get to that point. Maybe it'll change our thinking a little bit, but I think right now, it doesn't change it a whole lot, but it gives us some flexibility there, I think, if that's what we want to do.
What'd you think of Alex Magoo?
This goes back, obviously, we scout these guys from college. When he was bouncing around Jacksonville and Seattle, I think there was a couple times we thought about trying to bring him in. And then to see what he's done in the USFL, winning a couple championships there, and he's a big, strong, good-looking athlete. He's always had a big arm, and I think he's progressed as a player over that time through his years in the league. And I think, like a lot of players, especially quarterbacks, when you sit there and you don't get to play, it's tough to develop. So going there and having the opportunity to play, I think, really helped him.
How have you guys handled, we've seen all those little spring leagues pop up the last few years. How have you handled that from your side of things? And, Micah came in here last year, ended up making the team. I mean, how do you go about kind of reviewing that and seeing what could potentially fit for you?
First of all, our pro scouting department does a great job with that. That's something those guys grind a lot of tape on and stuff. So those guys do a great job, and we're constantly talking about that. And most of the time, we have a pretty good history on these players that are playing in there to begin with, so we kind of know, and we've been tracking them to begin with. But again, those guys are going and betting on themselves and playing somewhere, and I think that's important for those guys to keep developing. And it's certainly it's been a nice avenue to look at some players, especially as you enter training camp and things like that.
Brandon, do you want to see Jordan play a lot in exhibition games, or do you not need that?
Yeah, it's a little bit of that double-edged, thing. I mean, you'd like to see him play a lot if you could promise me we could protect him and keep him healthy, So I think that'll be probably something Matt, as he goes through it, it's a feel thing, for what he feels he needs. Yeah, I go back and forth. There's part of me that with all these young players, not just Jordan, that you want to see him play a lot, but then there's times you just want to, Ted Thompson and bubble wrap him and get to the first game and figure it out. But I think that, talking to Matt and working through those conversations, I think that's going to be something that as we go, he feels. And luckily we have a couple of these practices, that we're going to be able to, go against other teams. That'll be really important for us as well.
Are joint practices really the next best thing to preseason games?
Yeah, I mean, and in some ways I think it gives you, they both have their positives and negatives, I guess. But with the joint practices, obviously, you're able to get a live look and protect your quarterbacks a little bit more. And obviously, you're setting things up to what you want to see as well. But then at the same time, the game's not played that way. The game's played, where it's chaotic and things happen where you can't expect it. And I think that's where players probably learn the most. But it's probably the next best thing.
Ryan, Rich has said he likes having multiple kickers to either, take some stress off one guy or for competition. Do you anticipate adding another at some point?
Again, I think we'll see how it goes. I think Rich would like 20 specialists if he could have them. And to those guys' credit, they work them now, and I have a lot of faith there. But I think we'll kind of see how training camp goes to see if that makes sense.
Brian, you got Watson and Dobbs on offense, Walker and Wyatt on defense. What do you guys look for that tells you that they're making that second-year jump that you always hope for? Is there something that catches your eye in that regard that gives you the notion?
Yeah, I think for me it's just consistency. I think when most of these young players, especially the guys that are very talented, come in, you see the flashes right away. Can we do it down in and down out within the scheme and make plays within the scheme, what the coaches are asking them to do. So the consistency part is, I think, for all young players is what we're constantly looking at. It's one thing to flash and make plays, off your natural ability and what you've known in the past, but can you take everything that's being taught to you and make plays within that scheme? I think that's kind of what you're looking for.
I know you're thinking about your team, but since it all starts with the division, how do you assess the NFC North?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, nobody's had a first practice yet. You know what I mean? So, and every year is a different year. There's the whole league. The whole division's pretty talented. Obviously, Minnesota kind of sits on top of that with what they did last year. But every year is a new year, and to kind of predict that would be kind of foolish, I think, just because I think it's there's too many unknowns right now.
Yesterday, Mark joked that if you want to see the Packers on Hard Knocks, then watch the show with the Jets, and because they've got 8 of them. Well, what's going on there? When have you seen that many people go from one team to another in the same time frame?
Yeah, that's probably not a question for me. I may have lived a little of that, but in the past, but that's not really a question for me. But they got a good team, and I think it'll be interesting to watch. That's for sure.
Brian, you have a lot of offensive linemen you've drafted in the last couple of years who aren't necessarily starters right now. Deshaun Ryans, Rasheed Walkers, guys like that. What do you expect? What do you need to see out of some of those guys this year, this summer?
Well, I mean, Tom, I think how big of a priority that is for me, and I think competition really is really important there, and having depth there and competition and keeping that room growing is, I think it's just vital. The trenches are such a big part of what we do, and I just think that the competition, especially because we have so many young players in that room, that it's really healthy. That they got to kind of each day they got to get out there and compete for it. So. I'm excited about that group. I think we have a really deep group, and those guys are hard to find. So I think we came into the off season with 13 guys, which is very unusual to have that many guys, especially guys that we think very highly of. So I think that'll be something we continue to try to do as we move forward here is keep that group really strong and competitive.
Will someone emerge that you didn't expect, you think?
Hope so. I mean, that's that always happens. I mean, but this group, I mean, there's guys like, Caleb Jones last year and Luke Tenuta, you know what I mean? Like, I think those guys they can play, you know what I mean? So, but again, it's going to be really competitive. It's going to be fun to see. I think it helps training camp, immensely, just because when you get to the second and third groups out there in preseason games and being able to protect the quarterback and run your offense, I think that's important. It helps us evaluate everything. I think when you struggle there, it's tough to evaluate some things. So,
Brian, getting back to that question about the division, does it feel different to be the team to not being chased the way you have been in the last few years?
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever looked at it like that. I mean, every year is a new year, and who's to say we won't be? You know what I mean? So. You just never know how that's going to go, and it's always competitive in this division. As you guys know, really, the records of the teams when we play within the division, I think that all over the NFL is they're tougher games because you're more familiar, and it's it's just a little different. So this year will probably be no different, but we're excited about it. We're excited to get after it, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Was here for the IPP program.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Kenneth Odomego was here for the IPP program. Obviously, he came in not knowing much about football. What are you hoping to see from him through training camp?
Yeah, just learning and growing, and he's made really good strides since his time here. I mean, you guys can imagine kind of being thrown into this environment with the background that he has and how tough that might be. But he shows up every day. He's working his tail off, growing, and he's accepted by the guys, and I think he's enjoying himself. So. It's an interest. This is our first time through this, and he's done a great job.
Is everyone in your department now in the new facility? When did you move in, and tell me what you think, how that's going to help out your operation?
Yeah, first of all, a lot of thanks to Mark and the organization for doing this. The efficiency already is just tremendous. It's probably cutting a half hour off some of their, especially our coaches, days just going back and forth. A lot of credit, has got to go to Joe Malcheski and Mike Hallbach, Mike Moynihan. They did I mean, to get this thing ready for the, what we're doing right now. But, you know, there's some of us that have been in this building a long time, and it's tough to move. You know what I mean? Change is tough, so it's tough to get some of those guys out of their offices and into the new spot. But, yeah, we're rolling. Sometimes it feels a little bit like you're in somebody else's house right now because, you know, it's not, you haven't got it, but it's beautiful. I don't know how many of you guys have had a chance to see it, but the team room, the crick, all the things that, you know, the meeting rooms, it's just, yeah, it's just first class. Like we've done things here in the past, it's just very, very first class. And, you know, kind of having the efficiency of meeting rooms and coaches right in the same spot is really going to help us.
What's the approach with Rashawn? When I asked that, not for the obvious stuff, but there's the contract is coming up, so
Sure.
you got that. He's a hugely important player. You want him out there, but there's also maybe the need to maybe press the brake a little bit there.
You said, I mean, he's such an important factor for our football team. So, you know, we're going to be very cautious in that as far as making sure that he's good to go. He's got a long career ahead of him, and we want to make sure that we do everything we can to get him to where he can go let it loose. He's done an amazing job, and as you guys know, it's going to be hard to hold him back. He's ready to go. He wants to keep pushing, and he will. But at the same time, I think, you know, we'll start him off in these next 2 to 3 weeks and kind of see where he's at. And, you know, I wouldn't put anything past him because he's a different kind of guy.
I think you would agree that there would be some value to maybe bringing back a Mercedes Lewis, but why did you ultimately decide to, you know, leave that room as it was?
Yeah, I think we never shut the door on those things, but at the same time, I think for us, we drafted, you know, 2 guys fairly high that we really want to see, and they're going to need those reps to get out there. You know, along with, you know, with Tyler Davis and Josiah DeGuara, I think, you know, we're really excited about those guys and what they can do for us. So those are always really tough decisions. You know, we had a lot of them this offseason, you know, moving on from guys that have been here a long time and personal relationships and just what they've done for this organization. Those things are hard. But I think moving forward is what we're trying to do. I think that was the best move at this point, but things can change fast. So.
Was here that you guys were the youngest team in the league year after year after year. I know you're in a different role now, but what was it like at this time, those years, trying to figure out what you had and how difficult or maybe exciting is that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, this is a young man's game. You know, you've heard a lot of people up here say that, and it's, you know, you got to be kind of green and growing. I think that Paul Brown might have said that way back in the day, and you got to keep an eye on that. So, you know, I think in the salary cap era too, that factors in quite a bit. So, I mean, that's our job here, right? Is to find players and develop them, and you know, you're always kind of keeping an eye on that while the main focus is right now. But I think if you don't keep yourself growing, you can get stagnant very quick. So, I think I learned that through that period of time, and I think, you know, the amount of time we have with these guys in preseason and the rules of we don't have as much time maybe to develop or to find out what we have. So sometimes that happens during the season, and that can be tough. But that's kind of that's the job and that's the challenge.
I know there's no victory laps in July, but for your rookie class so far, obviously 13 players, what's excited you most and who stood out to you so far?
Yeah, I think, you know, early on, what always excites me, and this group has done a phenomenal job, is how they work, you know, and they kind of seem to be team-first guys, which I think is really important. And but they all seem to be working on their craft, and it's very important to them. Now, we're at the very beginning stages, and the hard part's coming up. You know, how they handle the adversity and how they get through the adversity is going to be really important. But the makeup of the guy, I think, is very important for success in this league. And so far, they've met those they've answered those questions. But there's a long way to go, so we'll kind of see. But I'm excited for them because I think, again, this team, there's probably a little bit more opportunity for those young guys than there has been in the past. So I'm excited to see what they can do.
Sometimes coaches tend to peg guys in certain positions. So in the secondary, you know, you might have a guy they like who's a slot, a couple guys who are outside, a box safety or whatever. Are you more interested in seeing your 5 best DBs on the field, if possible, even if they don't maybe fit into that round?
Yeah, Tom, absolutely. I think for me, it's you want to get your best 11, right, on the field at the same time, however that might be. I think, you know, and this goes back to Ron and Ted, but like, you can get a little position specific sometimes where all of a sudden you have an injury or two and you're really in a bad spot. You need to have, guys that can do multiple things, that are well-rounded football players, that if asked to do something that might not be their strength, but they can go in there and do it at a high enough level where you can go win games. I think when you you get players that are really position specific that can't do other things, when the injuries hit and the dog days come, it can get tough, So we've always kind of erred on, hey, let's get a better, well-rounded football players that can do multiple things. And that's hard. Those guys, they don't grow on trees, but that's kind of our focus.
Your defensive line room is relatively young as well, so what do you hope to see from them in the coming weeks?
Yeah, they're a couple of those guys are going to have to take some quick steps and get up to speed in a hurry, but we're excited about what they can do. I think we have a lot of pass rush potential in that group, but obviously it all starts with stopping the run. So I think TJ made some great strides, last year, and I'm excited for what he can do. Obviously, Kenny's going to anchor that thing, and then Devontae. So those are the three guys I think we're counting on the most, and we got a couple of young guys that have done a really good job so far, but there's a long way to go. I mean, we haven't had a practice in pads yet, so we got a long ways to go for that, but we'll see.
Along those lines, Jerry said it takes a while for young defensive linemen to, to be ready, but you're going to be counting on those young guys, right? I mean,
yeah, I don't necessarily think it takes a defensive line all that long any more than any other position, but both these guys have pretty good pedigrees, and so we're excited about that, but we got some competition in that room too. Chris Slayton's coming back too. He did some nice things for us last year as well, so. We'll kind of see how it goes, but we're counting on a lot of young guys this year, and that's exciting, and it's a little anxious at times too. So we'll see how it goes, and we got a long time before that first game, but it'll come fast.
Brian, with tomorrow's practice and reflecting on this past offseason, what was the offseason like for you compared to other ones? Because you made some big important decisions when it came to the franchise.
Yeah, I kind of feel like every offseason, and we've, since 2018, with some of the things we've gone through, the pandemic and other things, like it's just, I think it's just kind of part of the job. And then, every offseason, there's going to be difficult decisions and tough choices, and it takes us as an organization to come together and figure those things out. But it's I don't know if it'll ever be. It's never really any different than any other off-season. It kind of seems that, every off-season there's going to be tough things, and you don't always know what those are. Sometimes you anticipate them, sometimes you don't. But I do, I feel very fortunate to be in this place with the support with Matt, Mark, Russ. As we go through those things, it's nice to have that kind of support.